Welcome. Today we will talk about discrimination in practice around us in our society and in our departments and organizations. As we talk about Chapter 4, discrimination in practice, we will see a variety of different examples included in how some of our colleagues, unfortunately, experience these mistreatments on a daily, weekly, monthly, or a yearly basis, if not more often. Workplace discrimination, which comes in many forms, can cause employees much undue stress, marginalization, and certainly unfair treatment or inequities through various daily indignities that individuals may suffer, as well as through unearned privileges that are afforded to some individuals, but not to everyone. So discriminatory practices can be based on age, based on gender, based on skin color, based on disability, based on height, based on physical appearance, based on religion, based on culture, based on accent, and based on many other dimensions, perhaps. So let us start with physical appearance and body size. Employers and customers in the business world regularly make decisions based on people's appearance. So think about when you're applying for a job. You go in wearing a nice tie, a nice outfit to make sure you make a good first impression. That's all based on, obviously, the idea of physical appearance and making first impressions that are hopefully positive. Employers and managers often realize and think that employees with a professional, clean, and neat appearance often make the difference in making a big sale or securing an important deal with a client. So physical appearance does matter, but discriminating against individuals whose physical appearance does not fit your perception of what a successful person might look like can get you into a lot of trouble in the United States because of certain laws. So this is where you have to be very, very careful to make sure you don't discriminate against individuals based on protected categories. Although physical appearance and body size are not protected categories, but people do fall into the protected categories based on their appearance, based on their body size. So you have to be very mindful to make sure you're not violating these laws. So dress codes, grooming requirements, and other such policies are permitted under current policies in the United States, so long as they are enforced in a fair manner toward all individuals, regardless of their diversity dimensions or protected categories. We have to agree with the fact that females often face more of the glass ceiling barriers than men, simply because of their appearance, right? In other words, simply because they were born as women, as little girls who became women in the workplace. So, do I deserve this privilege that I have as a male simply because I was born a male? Well, no, I have not done anything to earn it. So that's what we refer to as unearned privilege. But unfortunately, the privileges that I get often come at a cost to my colleagues who are of the opposite gender. So women are expected, for example, to be attractive, yet not too sexy to distract colleagues or customers. They're expected to be strong, yet feminine. They're expected to be intelligent, but yet not bossy or too smart. And they're expected to be fun, yet not too loosey-goosey, because that does not represent a professional person in the workplace. So men and women are treated differently based on the expectations of society simply because they fall into their gender category. This is where discrimination comes in. Discrimination means treating people differently, which is not necessarily always unfair or illegal unless it is based on a protected dimension or category. So discrimination does not necessarily mean being unfair or making quick decisions, getting angry, being foolish, being wrong about a situation, having an innocent misunderstanding, violating company policy, changing your mind or changing a practice because of continuous improvement, or taking action without proper documentation, or even making a decision based on a precise situation at hand. However, there are equal employment opportunity laws which make it unlawful to discriminate on the basis of certain protected categories. In other words, when a person is treated differently because of his or her age or religion or ethnic background or skin color or gender, then that would be discrimination that is illegal. And this is where we look at, in some cases, the impact a decision has on a person, the way he or she was treated, or the fact that they were not accommodated, or the fact that they were harassed, as obviously being illegal discrimination. When it comes to harassment, discrimination laws generally prohibit harassment, and harassment is a special category of discrimination, especially if it is based on a protected category like sexual orientation or gender or skin color or a person who is different from everybody else. So sexual harassment can be a behavior that is unwelcome, unsolicited, and repeated. There are several types of sexual harassment in the workplace. Two important ones are quid pro quo and hostile work environment that we all need to be aware of. Threatening to punish or to reward an employee in his or her job, depending on whether the subordinate complies with or refuses a request for a sexual favor, falls in the category of quid pro quo. A hostile work environment is basically an environment where the sexual content of the workplace, company, or department is so abusive, so severe, so offensive, and so pervasive that it affects employees' working conditions. So just like managers and employees can have a hostile work environment, in the academic environment, we can have a hostile learning environment, which is a situation where inappropriate remarks consistently take place and is not corrected by the facilitator, the trainer, or the teacher who's in charge of the discussion or the class. So this is a situation where insensitive and inappropriate remarks should be addressed publicly by the teacher or by the leader, so everyone in the class or in the group understands the ground rules and the fact that inappropriate or insensitive comments are not appreciated nor tolerated. So you should never allow a hostile work environment or a hostile learning environment because you will suffer and your colleagues suffer as a result of it as well. Some of the laws that can apply to discrimination or sexual harassment cases can include the Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1991, state fair employment laws, which can vary from location to location in the United States, state tort claims including assault and battery, invasion of privacy, infliction of emotional distress, and many other laws that you need to be aware of in your workplace. President Franklin Roosevelt once said that we must scrupulously guard the civil rights and civil liberties of all our citizens, whatever their background. We must remember that any oppression, any injustice, any hatred is a wedge designed to attack our civilization. So civil rights are given to every American citizen for a good reason. We must not violate them. When you're a manager or employer or a human resource professional or a team leader, there are many great guidelines offered in the textbook for you. First of all, have a clearly defined policy against sexual harassment and sexual discrimination. Investigate harassment complaints thoroughly, fairly, and involve only those who must be involved. Protect the privacy and reputation of both the alleged victim and the alleged harasser. Make sure to involve human resource professionals and the legal counsel from the outset when the complaint is made by a person. Protect the complaining victim from retaliation by the manager, by the employer, or his or her coworkers in the department in the organization. Respond to the complaint or to the case based on facts, not assumptions. Finally, always take an appropriate action based on the evidence and your findings. So your action should be commensurate with the seriousness of the harassing conduct. We also need to be aware of certain daily indignities that some of our colleagues or employees or customers unfortunately may experience on a day-to-day basis. Daily indignities are those negative things that people do or say to or even about one another on a continuous basis because of their biases and perceived differences. These daily indignities are often demonstrated in many different forms. There are many documentaries showing daily indignities based on a person's age, based on a person's color, based on a person's body size, disability, or even religion, for example. I remember seeing a documentary about age and attitude, which showed an experiment on how people respond to applicants based on their age, especially older workers. And unfortunately, people made some very stereotypical negative statements that older people are basically old dogs and you cannot teach an old dog a new trick and things like that. So people with experience and very good qualifications are often not given a job simply because they're considered an older worker. And an older worker in the United States is defined as a person who is 40 years of age or above. So be mindful that just because somebody's older does not mean he or she cannot do the job. There are many forms of daily indignities that people experience, so you and I need to make sure our environment is free of any daily indignities. This way, nobody is stressed or discriminated against simply because of his or her gender, age, body size, religion, or other dimensions of diversity. Remember that workforce diversity management is about creating harmony in our head, in our heart, and in our habits. So, in other words, we need to think, we need to feel, we need to behave consistently based on facts, based on evidence, and based on requirements of the law and the policies of the organization every single day. We also need to understand about unearned privileges, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. Unearned privileges are advantages given to some individuals and withheld from others without regard to their personal efforts or abilities because of perceived differences. The existence of unearned privilege usually leads to tension, to stress, and frustration because it usually comes at a cost to someone else. Sometimes society automatically affords a person unearned privileges because he or she follows what is considered to be the norm. If you recall back on your statistics days, the normal distribution curve, the norm is basically defined as a place where the majority could be covered. So if the majority speaks one language and there are a minority of individuals who speak different languages, then they would be obviously considered to fall outside of the norm. So those are considered minorities. And the minority falling outside of the normal distribution curve would unfortunately often suffer because society affords and builds everything for the majority, for those who fall in the norm. So think about wearing a jacket or buying a shirt. How many of these jackets would fit you? And how often do you have to go out of your way to a specific location to buy certain shirts or shoes or outfits? If you don't have to go to a big and tall store, then you fall in the norm. On the other hand, if you have to go to a big and tall place to buy shoes or shirts or jackets, then you fall in the minority group outside of the norm. So that means when you are not in the norm, you have to pay a little bit of extra effort or extra price to get what you need. When you do fall in the norm, society builds everything for you, which means you don't have to forego the extra cost or the extra effort to get what you want. So that's what we mean by privilege when you fall in the norm. In the workplace, for example, you see the bell curve that many individuals fall within, let's say 50% meets expectations. And then those who are above the expectations and those who are below the expectation. And then there's the 10% that are star employees. They outperform everyone. The 10% that unfortunately have serious deficiencies in meeting the standards. So the question is, who falls in these categories? Why do they fall there? Did we not train them? Are they not doing their jobs? Do they not know the standards? And if majority of the time, the 10% that have serious underperformance are people in protected categories, there must be something wrong with the system. There's nothing wrong with the system, then obviously we are biased toward those individuals. And we need to seriously think about our own biases and how we assess individuals. And if we see individuals constantly receiving daily indignities or not being afforded certain privileges that are given to everybody else, we need to speak up. And when you do speak up about injustices or mistreatment towards certain individuals, then you're becoming a cultural ally. Cultural ally refers to those individuals, professionals, and managers and leaders who intervene or interrupt as needed to stop mistreatment or injustice from occurring to innocent persons in their departments or in their vicinity. These interventions and interruptions can be in the workplace or in a societal setting. These interventions can be public or private, and you can use whichever method is appropriate for you at the time to make sure people become aware based on those daily indignities or not affording everyone the same privileges is wrong. There are many ways to promote tolerance and fight hate in the workplace. For example, you can speak up when you're hearing inappropriate statements and slurs. Let your colleagues and employees know that biased speech is totally unacceptable in any place, especially in the workplace. Keep in mind that apathy or indifference can be just as dangerous as hate and stereotypes and discrimination itself. Encourage yourself and others to cross social borders by creating opportunities to interact with colleagues who are different from you and from your colleagues with regards to major dimensions and characteristics of diversity. Demand corrective action from law enforcement. Demand that the local law enforcement officers and agencies identify biased motivated criminal acts as hate crimes so it can be investigated and hopefully prevented. Create awareness, and you can do this by complaining to your local media outlets when they promote stereotypes and biased individuals or organizations. Last but not least, you can become aware of your own biases and stereotypes. You can do this by discussing hot topics with experts and taking reflective tests. For example, you can take a confidential test at the Hidden Bias website for your current personal reflections. And you can encourage your employees and colleagues to do the same and then have a discussion about it at a later date. As our colleagues at the NSU Human Resource Department always says, when a behavior is offensive, derogatory, inappropriate, harassing, pressuring, invasive, intimidating, threatening, isolating, forceful, violent, assaulting, you intervene. And when you do intervene, you are considered a cultural ally, but always intervene professionally, appropriately, and your goal is to raise awareness and prevent such incidents from happening in the future. To prevent biases and stereotypes and daily indignities and unearned privileges, we can use the STOP strategy. When meeting a person for the first time or meeting individuals who are very different from you, you can seek, you can talk, you can observe, and you can probe for more information in order to connect with these new colleagues or new customers. Use a STROP strategy to help you find the truth about another person, to store information for the long-term retention and recall, and to become a cultural ally when you see a person is being mistreated unfairly based on misinformation or based on stereotypes. Always remember, through equity and inclusionary practices, you can make diversity an advantage for you, for your team, and for your organization. Good luck.